Hello everyone and welcome to Power Playground. This is your host Michael, and today I'm going to be showing you all how to add a cooling fan to a first generation FlashForge Creator Pro. Now I believe that the current generation, I don't know the exact, I think this is the first generation. I haven't seen any earlier models of this, but I think that the newest one has a cooling fan built into it, so you might not have to do it here, but if you do, I'll go ahead and link the files in the description to print them out. Essentially, it is this particular mod right here. What you have to do is you have to buy a 24-volt fan, and I think you have to get a couple 10mm screws for the top here, along with 4 nuts, and I believe there's a couple 12mm screws on the side here. So you'll just need those bits of hardware in order to assemble this, as well as some extra wiring to wire up our 24-volt cooling fan. Now you definitely don't want to go with a 12-volt fan because any of the circuitry in FlashForge is all made for 12 volts, or sorry, not 12 volts, but for 24 volts. So you'll probably end up frying any sort of 12-volt hardware, at least these fans in particular. This particular print is a bit complicated, so let me give you all a bit of an example here. As you can see, this is the first attempt at me trying to print this. As you can see, there's a lot of support. I accidentally printed this with support, so you don't want to do that because what will happen is the support will stick in there, and it's literally impossible to get it out unless if it's some sort of solvent type deal. So with this one, I printed with no supports. I had a pretty thick layering on the top and the bottom layers, so it wouldn't of course cave in or anything like that, which it seemed to print out pretty decently. So what I'll do here first is I'm just going to tip the printer over. Actually, before we do that, I want to move the printer in the top, or in the front left. So what this will do is this will give me the maximum length of cord that I'll need. So then I'll tip it over once I have achieved that. And I'm going to go ahead and take this bottom panel off. Okay, so this particular header right here is the extra fan header. Of course, your board may look a bit different. This is an aftermarket deal I did on another video where I replaced this board and I had to replace this header. And then, so yeah, essentially what I'll need to do is I'll need to either get a similar connector like this or just take this connector out and solder in a similar one like this. It'll be easier to be able to put in an aftermarket type cabling. So that's probably what I'll do. But yeah, first I want to go ahead and measure the actual length of wire that I'll need. So yeah, there's this I don't know what you call it exactly, but it's just this tubing. So I'll take my bendy ruler, give it an extra inch on the header, kind of keep things a bit clean so they aren't wires going everywhere. So that's about a foot right there. I'll just go by sections. It's about a foot right there. So it looks like it's going to be 48 inches of wires I'm going to need, roughly 4 feet. So all I did was I just measured from the board down this wire, down this tube, all the way to our hot end carriage. And then of course the fan, it'll be mounted down here near the actual hot ends. It'll be clipped on. So I'm going to find about 4 feet of 2 wires of similar gauge like this. I don't want anything too thick just because this is a tiny little channel. There's not a whole lot more room left on it just because it has 2 extruders. Alright folks, so I have my soldering iron here, my wire strippers, and I'm going to go ahead and get the actual fan wired up here. So I got my 2 4-foot leads, and what I've done is these are identical colors because I don't have black wire in some gauges, and I just fished this out of the scrap end, so I just marked a little black end with a Sharpie. Works just as good. So now I just snipped a little end off of my fan here. I'm going to use my wire strippers to strip back the wire. Grab some heat shrink here real quick. Cut my lengths. Just need a couple bits here. And I'll go ahead and thread them onto our wires. Get my helping hands out just to give myself a hand. Some nice rosin core solder to tin our leads. Okay, so what I did was I replaced one of these connectors with one of these. Now, if you're not too comfortable with soldering into circuit boards like these and comfortable with the actual risk of damaging said circuit board, then I recommend buying one of these little connector bits here. I'll try to find it and put it in the link in the description. Yeah, I just soldered in a lead like this, so I just have my bearings of wires. The one to the left is negative, just following like all the other similar wires. Just gotta plug it in there when I'm ready. But before that, I'm gonna go ahead and install this on the actual hot end carriage first. Let's go ahead and install this fan on the carriage. So first, I'll just have to remove these 12mm screws that I've already put in, just to secure everything in place before I actually do the install here. This will hook on the bottom. You see there's like a little notch on both sides here, so you just have to line it up to where it's centered. And then you'll see these little notches here where the bearings go. Just slide this in proper. There we go. There we go. Make sure to jiggle around, make sure it doesn't move on you. Next step is to basically, you'll want to be able to secure it here. Now I recommend against trying to route it, you want to use this zip tie up here to organize it. You don't want to, I wouldn't recommend getting in the way or clipping on these fan cables, because if you have to like unjam one of these extruders, you'll have to remove this fan here. Clip this little guy right here, the zip tie. I think I can just slot it in there. Don't have to worry about taking everything else out. And as you go, I'd recommend replacing the zip ties you've taken out. Otherwise, the wire may just come out again. So I'll go ahead and skip past to where I have this entire cable routed throughout the entirety of this tube here. Alright, so I got everything plumbed and wired in, this red cable coming along here. And of course it is just wired into this connector. Like I said, you probably want to buy a connector like this. Another thing to check is if you notice this little, let's see, can we get that in a better focus maybe? If you notice that little MOSFET right there, that little black component around those tiny little dots, some boards may not have that solder. This is next to the extra pin, which I had to solder, of course, just change over, but that is where the fan will go. And of course, the MOSFET is not there. You will not be able to successfully get this working. You'll have to either solder one in or just, have to manually switch the fan on and off. Everything is pretty much pre-programmed in the firmware to accept that fan. So that's pretty much about it in terms of wiring. I'm gonna go ahead and put everything back together. And yeah, pretty much now you just go into your favorite slicer like Simplify 3D or Replicator G and just turn the fan functionality on. Alright folks, that's about it for today's video here. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button, consider subscribing, and check out some other videos that will be coming up on the screen here soon, and have a great day.